Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on whichever time zone you're in. Very, very warm welcome to all of you to today's interesting webinar. It's called Unlocking CSRD, Minimizing Risk and Maximizing Opportunities. We've got folks from, at last count, we had about 90 plus registrations from 35 countries, 65 cities, 35 countries. So that's really the spread of the audience. A very, very warm welcome to everyone who's taken time out to join this very interesting discussion on corporate sustainability reporting directive, CSRD. My name is Indrani, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Now, before we dive into the heart of this very interesting conversation, I'd like to take a minute or two to just set context. CSRD is a groundbreaking development in the realm of corporate sustainability. As I like to call it, it's like the Avengers of sustainability. So it brings together various heroes like transparency, accountability, and environmental responsibility to save our planet from corporate negligence. And I choose my words very carefully, to save our planet from corporate negligence. CSRD does indeed not only aim to harmonize reporting across the EU, ensuring that companies are not only talking the talk, but are also walking the walk. But also, I think it's a great way of not only de-risking your business in the EU, but also unlocking opportunities for yourselves for sustainable business. I think, I'm not going to do too much of the talking here today. We will hear from the experts here on this panel today. And we've got a stellar panel of experts, and I'll go to them in a minute. But, once again, a very warm welcome to the audience here. We'd love this to be a very interactive session as well. I know we have a lot of ground to cover, but we would be very grateful if the audience can, as the discussions are on, you can keep registering your questions or your observations and feedback in the chat session. So we'll try and, keep going back to them. I think that will make this conversation very worthwhile for all of us as we learn from each other. Right? So great. I think, without further ado, I'd like to go straight to our panelists. And, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to first introduce themselves briefly before I actually dive into the conversation. And maybe I'll go alphabetically. That's always the easiest bit. And therefore, let me go to Anna. Anna, if you could please introduce yourself to our wonderful audience.
Hello, Indrani. Hello, everyone, wherever you are. Big mix of people here today. And thank you again for the invitation. It's a big pleasure to be here today. So I'm Ana Goncalves. I'm based in Lisbon. I work for S317, which is a sustainability consultancy. And my background is a bit mixed. I actually started working in consultancy, strategy consultancy, a long time ago, almost 20 years ago. But then I decided to delve deep into the backgrounds of the science. So I did a PhD in sustainable energy systems. And I moved, and that's where I found this passion for sustainability and working closely with companies. As I was doing this PhD, I was also working in some very interesting consulting projects related with these areas. So this is where it started. It started 16, 17 years ago, this path in sustainability consultancy. And since then, I've been in this area, lots in the environmental side of it, but broadly speaking about what companies should do to be more sustainable. So that's my history.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for that. Moving to Elena, and Elena, maybe you should unmute yourself. Yes.
Thank you. So Elena Maksimovich. I see beautiful ladies today leading the ESG seminar. Very.
No, but we have a lot. We have a very diverse audience. So yeah.
Three speakers. Thank you, Indrani, for inviting. So Elena Maksimovich, PhD in geophysics climatology. My part in CSRD, it's the climate-related part, so climate-related disclosures. So I will be happy to answer the questions in this part particularly. And let's go. Karabi, passing you the flame. I'm in Paris, so the Olympic flame is somewhere near. So I'm passing the flame of sustainability.
No, and thank you for that. We do have a global panel of experts because Anna is in Lisboa, you're in Paris, and moving to Dr. Kaurabi Pathak. Kaurabi, would you like to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, Indrani. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Very good morning, good evening, good afternoon. And thanks, Anna and Elena. I am Dr. Kaurabi Pathak. I am the Chief Product Officer of AmploGlobal. I'm a climate change expert and PhD in climate change adaptation, mitigation. I did my postdoctoral as well in climate change adaptation. So my background is mix of industry, various industry sectors, and also R&D. And at AmploGlobal, we are bringing technology and business together to solve various sustainability issues so that we can have a better world to live. So yeah, thank you so much and looking forward for this session.
Oh, wonderful.
Over to you, Indrani.
Thank you, and wonderful for that. Indeed a better world to live in, I think. So a warm welcome once again to a stellar panel and a warm welcome to everybody who's joined in from around the globe. I'd like to remind you all to, make this a very interactive session and keep noting your questions and observations and feedback and comment on the chat session. We'll keep a close watch on the chat session. We'd love to learn from each other. Great. And with that, I think let's dive straight into the conversation. Anna, let me come to you to kick things off with you. So I think the first thing that came to my mind, and anybody who hears of a fresh new acronym in the ESG world, in the sustainability world, right, was that, there were already existing frameworks, right, TCFD and a whole lot of other acronyms. How does CSRD as a new requirement ensure coherence and avoid duplication of efforts for companies who are already adhering to multiple frameworks?
Yes, thank you, Indrani. And it's a big concern for companies. So it's a great question. So I think we have to understand that CSRD tries to be like an almost like an umbrella sustainability reporting standards. So CSRD is basically the mandate for companies to do this reporting, and then it's the ESRS, then the new the not new, they're almost 1 year old documents that came last year that actually made it systematic exactly what were the requirements for reporting. And what we were seeing is that, previously companies were mostly using GRI, which is probably widely the most used framework for reporting for companies, sustainability reporting, of course. And there was a big effort regarding trying to have a big alignment between both frameworks, and there is even some documents that can attest to how the two frameworks are aligned. And this is I think a big support for companies that were already doing this kind of reporting before, and that they have to align what they're doing with the requirements for CSRD. I think one of the big changes here is about exactly the framework for risks and opportunities, and linking here as well with the theme of this session. I think there is a very important structure that they've provided for companies, even for them to think about risk and opportunity for their own businesses related with the different topics of sustainability. And this links to what you've mentioned about TCFD. I think they have taken some of the some alignments with TCFD regarding how to look at climate risks and opportunities specifically, but then they've widened it to the whole framework of sustainability themes. And I think this is also very important for companies because it's not only a requirement. I don't think it should be seen only as a requirement, but as a tool, because understanding these risks and opportunity will be crucial to future-proof their businesses. And it's important for them to understand what is coming, and in terms of risks, what is coming for them in terms of new markets, new opportunities, new projects that will come, new clients, what are the new concerns about the clients, and also the risks, because there will be plenty, not only related with climate, but also with the inequalities of work. So a bunch of themes that need to be thought about, and basically the CSRD and the ESRS provide this framework for them to actually think about this and apply this into their own strategy. So yes, I think, Indrani, that is a big concern for companies. Just going back to your question, but I think there is no big duplication, because I think this is a tool for companies then to use that umbrella, and there's the alignment is there. So companies can then use what they've done for the CSRD reporting to respond to any other type of reporting requirements that they have.
Okay. No, excellent. I mean, I think what I hear you say is it's almost like a harmonizing mechanism, helping companies harmonize the various reporting as well, in addition to further strengthening their businesses. Excellent insights, and thank you for that, Anna. Let me move over to Korobi for the next question. And Korobi, if you could help break down the main components of CSRD for our audience here. What are the key areas that, let's say, any sustainability officer or any business head must focus on in order to do progress around CSRD?
Yeah, sure, Indrani, and thank you so much for the question. Yeah, as CSRD is emerging now, actually CSRD needs a very proper planning for the companies when they want to implement it. And it starts with designing and planning phase, actually. It starts with planning phase and then implementations. For planning, it's very important that having a good capacity building, actually understanding of CSRD regulations. So any companies before reporting, they need to know what kind of data, which are the areas they have to focus, because there are lots of data points, lots of attributes in the CSRD. So it's need a proper planning and to know which are the areas they should focus. That's why stakeholders capacity building is important to start. And then I would say, the second most important part is the scoping. So the legal exercise for the compliance. So which are the area like mandatory? There is some areas of exemption as well. So the scoping part is important. Like once, in the planning phase, once they know about the proper knowledge about the EU CSRD, then the scoping part, and then they can go into materiality.
Sorry, Korobi, please go on.
Okay.
Your presentation is not visible.
There's no presentation, sir. If maybe request you to go on mute, please. Thank you. Korobi, please go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So yes. After scoping, it's important to have the materiality assessment and both materiality, impact materiality and financial materiality. So which we call double materiality. It's important to do double materiality so that the company can need to know, then they can have the knowledge which are the material topic they have to focus on. So that's why data is important. And in double materiality, company can focus on the impact to the people, impact to the planet, and what are the scopes, and also the significance of the impact, short term, long term, or even the medium impact. So once materiality assessment done, then company can know the material topics they have to focus. Then they can go to risk and opportunity assessment for those topics which have been identified in double materiality, basically. So for ESG risk and opportunity assessment, there are standards like in CSRD, there are ESRS standards, right? So for like climate change and water management, for marine biodiversity and ecosystem, there are various attributes. And once they could know that these are the topical materiality, then they can go to that next step of assessment. So in that process, they can identify the risk areas and gap areas. Also, they can do industry benchmarking as well. So with that, they can know the gap areas. And also, like Anna explained in the previous in her previous answer, that how they can know that with the other framework as well. Say for they already have GR reporting, then they can know the gap areas, like maybe which are they can now include in CSRD as well. So those are important, and that help in gap analysis and risk and opportunity assessment. And then that leads to strategy, planning, and the remediation for the risk area. And finally, they can go to change management within the organization, like how they can integrate CSRD in their businesses. So the process, there are various processes and various components when a company want to align with CSRD, and step by step. And so they can actually start the journey, and they can be measured with time. So these are the important components that company should actually do in EU CSRD regulation.
Great. Thank you for that breakdown. I think what I also heard you say was it's almost a journey in time, and depending on the evolution of the company, it can keep maturing its processes, which is always a great thing. I have a little rejoinder to my earlier question that you answered. You did break it down for us and for the audience. Could you also just briefly mention what are the buckets or specific types of information that companies are required to disclose under CSRD, especially to compare to what was required before? Just at a high level, maybe buckets of information. I think that would be a useful takeaway for our audience.
Yeah, for EU CSRD, the companies they are already in sustainability reporting since actually before GRI was there. And new regulations, like some are regulatory, some are voluntary as well. For some companies, they are doing in the journey they are already, and some are because it's become now one part of mandatory part as a regulatory side. So they have started doing. And from 2025, the listed companies who are actually under the scope of reporting, they actually have to do. So it's a good time that they start now for the readiness. That's very important. And there are many data points actually. That's why the readiness is important. Like for CSRD, it is more than 1,200 data points they need to disclose, which are in the line of their processes, policies, then processes for the action, how they will do that, and targets, various metrics are there. And also in this risk and opportunity, there are financial impact as well. So they also need to disclose those based on the scoping part, because that's why scoping is important. There are many data points, but everything is not mandatory. It's depend on the profile of the company. So that readiness is important. And data management. So yes, all the E, S, and G part, there are 10 topical standard actually. under environment, social, and governance, which they need to get prepared for that. And yeah, so that's very important, that side, and very good question. Thanks, Indrani.
Thanks, Gauravi. And I think you linked it back to the point that the scoping becomes so important for companies to even begin this journey of, where to start it with and how to progress. Great. Thank you for that answer, Gauravi. I'd like to move over to Elena now. And Elena, I know you work very closely with companies around, helping them, enabling them overcome some of the challenges. So really, from your experience, what are the most significant challenges that industries face when trying to comply with the EU CSRD, particularly in terms of data collection, reporting, and, any other challenges? What's been your experience of working with clients across the EU?
Thank you, Indrani. Thank you, Karabiana, for a great introduction. Um, to be honest, reading the CSRD is already the challenge. So this is already the first step to decode what is the expected metrics, to find which metrics I need to disclose. It's already a journey. So the good news that other countries are also adopting the rules, for example, for climate related financial disclosures. So Australia, UK, United States, they also introduce the regulatory policies. So sometimes you need to puzzle a little bit between different regulatory policies. So the idea is very good, just sometimes simply the metrics is missing, like what exactly is it, dollars, is it percentages? So this just very simple things. The step one, when starting the disclosures, specifically with the climate related risk, which is my specialty and my expertise, so I'm in the right place to speak about this part. So the first step is data gathering. So the data gathering of everything related to carbon emissions, so site by site, for each operational site, for each facility. So this data gathering part, a workflow, is a standalone effort, and it could take years. So this information is very time consuming. So gathering this information is time consuming. Then there is a challenge, for example, with the physical climate risk. It's to find the relevant climate data, so flood, wildfire, this type of hazard data, relevant to each activity, again, each facility site, operational site, or different business. So this collection process could take years. So it's not a one-day process. Then the step two is the financial impact modeling. So this is also the exercise. So quantifying in financial metrics and financial units the transition risk and physical climate risk. So this translation, it is it could be it is a new deviation basically of the financial modeling. So it's financial modeling from the economical point of view, but in this case with new ingredients, so with the transition risk and physical climate risk integrated. The new challenge that is emerging with the new regulation is the forward-looking scenario analysis. So this, there is always the question: so how do we make it like bottom up, top down? So do we evaluate flood risk on the asset level, and then we integrate on the company level? But at the same time, central banks, they don't have this information, so they are applying top-down approach. On the macro level, methodologies for scenario analysis. So what means scenario analysis? How to make it forward-looking? Because, for example, for flood wildfire, there's no forward-looking flood wildfire data because satellite didn't pass yet, for example. So there's no flood data in the future. The lack of guidance where to collect the data. So it's also okay, for example, European sources for climate data, they are only for the historical. They're not at all for the forward-looking climate data. So the metrics, so the clear specification of required metrics. This is the lag, but at the same time, reading the corporate reports of different companies helps also to understand like what is their practice. So welcome to read the corporate reports already published. So since 2-3 years already, many listed companies are doing the job. Yeah, so addressing these challenges, so data gathering, financial impact modeling, scenario analysis, forward-looking risk assessment, identification of the metrics that you could disclose. So yes, addressing these challenges requires really stepwise approach, structured approach to data collection, data storage, and disclosures. Yes. So this is a small portion of challenges. Good luck.
Yeah, indeed. Good luck. And but thanks for breaking that down. I do have a related question to what you said. Now, as per ESRS, as per the ESRS rules and guidelines, companies are required to assess their climate risk specifically, right? And sorry. Yeah. So what kind of climate data should companies be using, so that they can evaluate that risk, and that the notion of that risk, in a few words, what does climate risk mean? What kind of climate data could they be using? So that's a corollary to the earlier question.
Thank you. When speaking about ESRS E1, where we have the climate risk assessment, there are two major branches. So one is transition risk, another is physical climate risk. If we're speaking about the physical climate risk part, so it's so in CSRD there are 26 perils or climate anomalies or climate-induced types of events. Weather events, basically. So flood, wildfire, this classic hazards, but the wish list is about 26, but there are primary ones. So the wildfire, the flood, so those are the common ones. The sources, so originally this data comes from the National Weather Services. So the National Weather Services are doing very good work to provide open data for this information. So also in Europe, for example, Copernicus, it's a major European project providing also a lot of information. GRC, European Research Centers, UK centers, or European Center for Medium Weather Forecast, also provides very valuable historical climate data information. So the open sources are abandoned. Indeed, they sometimes they're a little bit too detailed. So this aggregation of the data sometimes could take some work. Yes. But historical data is quite easily available. The challenge is with the forward-looking, how to evaluate the forward-looking flood risk. So this is the big challenge for companies.
Great. Thanks for those insights, Elena. I'd like to move back to Anna, and let's say I'm a company, and I have the intent to absolutely develop a sustainable business, be compliant, and not just for the sake of compliance, but really to develop a sustainable business. Now, if you could help outline it for the audience and for us, what would an implementation roadmap look like? Like, what are there any timelines that we should be aware of? Are there any penalty? I mean, what are the penalties or consequences that companies could face if we don't comply, or if we delay complying? So if you could just throw a little bit of light around how does one begin, and what are there any key milestones or key timelines that one must need to be aware of?
Yes, thanks, Indrani. Yes, indeed, there are some milestones. So for companies that were already reporting according to the ENFRD, which was basically the previous EU reporting framework, the directive, the previous directive, they have to adapt to the new one right away. But for the companies that basically didn't have that mandatory reporting standards, they have the big companies, the large, what it's called, the large companies will need to provide these reports in 2026, looking at 2025. So this is going to be one of the first milestones for large corporations that didn't have to report before, because they didn't fall into the specification, the specific requirements, and are now within the scope of what is called a large corporation. And this will in 2026 they will have to report until 2025, and then the next year a larger group of companies will have to also report. So those are the two main deadlines, but 2026 is really the year to go. But if I'm going to be honest, we've been doing this road with a few companies that have been alerted to the need of sustainability reporting because of the CSRD. The 2026 shouldn't be the goal year, especially because if you do it only that year, and if you only start thinking about it in 2026, you won't have something ready to report, something proper to report on that year. This takes time. Our experience in working with companies is that it is a process. Most companies, even if they have already some processes in place, it is a process. It's not, as Elena was saying, just reading the ESRS and the CSRD is a challenge, but it's not rocket science, but it's very detailed, and it's a lot that needs to be covered. And it's a process, as Karabi was explained, and there needs to be different steps for you then to understand. And I just like to actually highlight here a point from Dex. That's, I don't know if everyone has access to the chats or if everyone saw it, but Dex made a very good point that change management should be involved in the beginning. What we usually say to our clients is that they should create a workforce from the beginning that involves many different areas of the company, because it is crucial that everyone is involved in this. So that it's not only when it comes to the strategy. So you now have to think about this, because you, like in procurement, you need to start talking with your suppliers about what they do for sustainability. It's not only when it's coming to the designing the strategy. It needs to be from the start, when we're understanding where the company is, how things are, what is material for the company, what are the main things, and then we delve. And this is a journey that the company needs to go through, and everyone needs to be involved from the start. So when it comes to actually leading this strategy thinking, they are already completely on top of things and completely aligned with what needs to be done. And exactly, thanks. So, and going back to what you also asked about the penalties. So yes. The CSRD does say that there should be penalties, but these should be fixed by each country. So when the countries bring the European directive to their own legislation, they should specify which kind of penalties could be applied to companies that do not comply with this directive. One of the only countries that has already done this is France, and which actually it's relatively, even like for me, a bit of surprising penalties, because one of the things that they say is that along with the fines, if a company denies an auditing process to their reports, they can even be going to jail. So heavy penalties there. But I think when we're talking about the what could go wrong if you don't do this, for me it's way beyond regulation, because what we see is that the market itself is demanding it. Not only not only the regulation, the legislators, but also the clients, the investors. And a lot of the companies that come to us because it's been required by their clients that they have as a transparent way of reporting to them and about what they're doing in their sustainability strategy. So it's very important, not only because of they have to, but it's also because if you want to keep relevant in the future, you should have all of this framework put in place. And think of the CSRD as, I come back to my previous point, think of the CSRD as a tool to how to leverage this pathway. How can I do a proper and robust ESG strategy with the specific KPIs that need to be there? And don't forget that this needs to be verified. And I think going back a bit to the Monty Pemberton, and I'm sorry if I didn't say this correctly, pronounce it correctly. It is important to have the data that is reported as accurate as possible, because this all needs to be verified. And it's in particular what you asked about the carbon emissions footprint, the GHG emissions. It will be verified against a specific standard. Either you can choose GHG protocol or ISO 14064 part 1. Well, there are plenty. But you will be verified against it. So you need to have that structure in place, the methodology in place to show that you've done that, or you've done it in a proper way. So those were my takes, Indrani. And I'm sorry because I also replied to a few questions on the
no,
on the
that's
chat.
what we want, and thank you so much, Anna, for that. I think it certainly gave me a lot of clarity for sure. What I heard you say was, it's, you don't just keep 2026 in mind. It's almost a journey that you begin today if you have not already begun it. And, maybe 2025 can be almost like a rehearsal, or, as you, as you fine tune and
we
publish.
call it the year zero. The year zero, because there are gonna be mistakes. There are gonna be things that because for you to report on 2026, you need to collect the data in 2025. And sometimes you don't even know what kind of data you need to collect. So you actually need to start doing this now, to put the processes in place so that you can collect it in 2025 and then actually be ready to report on 2026, if you only want to report on 2026, which we always tell companies that they should do a trial before the year that they need to start reporting.
So a year zero trial, I mean, that sounds to be a great place to start. And I think for the rest of our audience, because not everybody may have read the chats, I'll just read out Monty Pemberton's question. And thank you, Monty, for that question. I know Korobi and Anna have addressed it, but I'll anyway read it out for the benefit of the rest of our audience. That he asked, how critical is accurate measurement of GHG emissions attested by an audit firm or other relevant authority under prescribed standards, for example, ISO 10464 for CSRD. And I think Korobi replied to that as well. And accurate GHG emission is always critical. And Anna built on that and said, whatever you report, it will be verified again. So yes, I think the bottom line is that it has to be attested by a framework or a body. It has to be reported that way. But does that answer your question, Monty? And if there are any rejoinders to that question, feel free. Others feel free to note on the chat. I think this panelist, this panel is very helpful, and they'll love to answer it. I think we've got another question. I'll actually open this question now to any of the panelists, whoever wants to answer it. So Hannah Thompson, and I hope I've got the name correct. Hannah's asking, is there any link between CSRD and the NGFS? So I don't know what NGFS is. If any of the panelists can expand it for us, that would be good. And feel free to answer Hannah's question.
I'm I'm happy to answer. So NGFS, what is the link between NGFS and CSRD? So NGFS, it's a network for greening financial system. So central banks and retail banks, they are, so they're climate stress testing their portfolios. And to do this exercise, they need the climate scenarios. Climate scenarios in the future, so how different warming scenarios, how different action, for example, greenhouse gas emissions, or for example, carbon tax pricing for example, per ton of carbon, how this would affect banks and their portfolios. So NGFS group, so Network for Greening Financial System, they propose the climate change scenarios, which are built on top of scientific climate change scenarios. So the scientific climate change scenarios, they come from the IPCC group, so the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change group. It's a group of climate scientists, around 5,000 climate scientists globally. They write every 5 years the big summary with the multiple 12 chapters with the newest findings. And the same group, so IPCC group, they are in charge of defining climate scenarios. So each time, so every say 5-6 years, they redefine climate change scenarios. These climate change scenarios are used for global climate modeling. So national institutions in all countries, they use these climate scenarios defined by IPCC to run climate models, which are kind of weather models, but more extended because you study climate variability on a long run. So it's not a 7-day forecast. It's running much more extensively. Basically, they're digital twins of the Earth. And NGFS scenarios are built on top of these scenarios with these model runs with this data. So yes, there is a link between Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is requesting you to do the climate scenario analysis for your company. And basically the group so network greening financial system, so they showed the example how they're doing it with banks, so how they're working, how they're doing this scenario analysis with banks. So yes, so this is basically the description of all these abbreviations, so the connection between CSRD, NGFS, and IPCC.
Great. Thank you for answering that, Elena, and I hope, Hannah, it answers your question. We've got another great question, and this is a really good question because it says, could we understand a little more? This is from Abhijit. Could we understand a little more about how non-EU companies, but who have business dealings with Europe, how are they impacted by CSRD? So really, I think we're talking of, let's say, Asian companies who export to Europe and so on and so forth. Non-EU companies, but who have business equations with Europe. Does CSRD impact them? And if so, how? Any of the panel members can take that.
Yeah, I can take that, Andy. Indrani. So
yeah,
it's one. Okay. So yeah, for any company who has operations in Europe, it can be non-EU as well, and it is under the scope of EU CSRD actually, and it's always depend on the revenue of the company and the number of employees. There are certain criteria to check the scoping. If it is under the scope, then definitely it's the same. It's also applicable for non-EU as well.
So every single thing that, let's say, an EU-based company will need to do equally is applicable to any non-EU company, let's say, exporting stuff to Europe. Is that what you're saying, Karabi?
Who has presence in EU? It can be a non-EU company. The company can be from US or from any geography, but they have a major operations in Europe. So they also have to be comply with EU CSRD regulation.
Right. Great.
So if I can add on
yes,
it,
Anna,
thank you, Karabi. Yes, and that is that's one of the big parts is that it doesn't even if your group is based, if your main company is based outside of Europe, if you do have a branch or a company, a sister company or child company within the European Union, then, and it does fit what they called a large company, it is still within the scope of the CSRD. But it's not the only way that companies can be impacted by this, because one of the big things about CSRD, it's not only looking at your own operations, but looking to your value chain. So there will be requirements for the suppliers. So if you supply to a company in the EU, you'll be requested a number of things from the how you manage your workforce, the policies that you have regarding your workforce, your carbon footprint as well. That's one of the big points of it. Even the traceability of the value chain, that will be a big point for EU companies. So it is not only about what you do in Europe, it's also how along in the value chain of your own company, if it goes to Europe, because then it can be impacted in that way, because that will be a big part of the reporting, and increasingly so. It's not only the CSRD, but all of the reporting standards right now are more and more focused on the value chain. So these will be part of the future if you do business with the EU.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I know you addressed the question around penalties a little earlier, but we do have
yes, a question, specific question.
Yeah, a specific question from Bhatta Senapati.
So
if you could maybe answer that.
So Bhatta, so yes, Bhatta was asking specifically about the penalties. So what I mentioned is that the CSRD does not foretell exactly what are the penalties that will be applicable. What they say is that each country should define their own penalties within their for the companies with their own country. So for the companies that have already transposed this directive into their own laws, this should be defined. When that process is done, this should be defined. What I mentioned before is that France is one of the only countries that have done this. They have done this at the beginning of this year. And what they've did, so one of the penalties is that if you don't report if you don't present a report, there is a fine attached to this. It's not a large fine. Now I don't recall the numbers exactly, I'm sorry. And then if you, for example, if you have a report and you deny an audit to that report, you can be fined and you can have jail time, for example. So you can say that it's heavy penalties for some of the non-compliance that is expected.
Okay. So heavy penalties for non-compliance. Okay,
it will depend on the countries, of course, but in the France, the ones that have been defined probably can set the tone for the rest. I don't know, but the ones that have been now defined, yes, I think they can be considered heavy penalties.
Great. I think we've had an excellent set of discussions, and we do have a little bit of time. So if the audience has any more questions, please feel free to keep typing, and our panelists will take them on. But while that happens, I think, a thought just came on, is there a better way to leverage technology, or let's say AI, or, there's stuff like that to, help bring in more clarity and help companies navigate these very complex enterprise-wide journeys. And I refer back to a discussion with Kauravi on this earlier. And I think we may just have enough time for a quick demo. Kauravi, may I invite you to demonstrate how, let's say, an AI-enabled platform that Amplo has developed, how can that help companies with their CSRD compliance strategy? Just a very brief, high-level. You have about a couple of minutes before we actually close.
Yeah, sure, Indrani. Thank you so much. Definitely, I can do that. I will share my screen and I will show how AI platform module can be helpful for CSRD regulation and end-to-end solution. Basically, yeah. So let me share my screen. Give me a moment, please. Okay. My screen is visible
Yes.
to all?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, this is AI-led platform, AmploFly 4.0. So AmploFly 4.0 actually has various templates for various framework, CSRD, GRI, TCFD, and also for various regulations. So, and we also bring solutions for EU CSRD regulation, and basically we implement it using the module. So you can see here, basically this is whole of the CSRD, you can say. And as you know, in CSRD, there are 1,200 plus data points. So including everything, we have a very robust and you can say that whole of the organization in CSRD you can see here, and the standard as well as for CSRD based on the CSRD principle and ESRS standard. Our module is have actually 4x3 matrix, the way we develop the solution. So there are 3 domains you can see: environment, social, and governance, and 4 phases based on the standard. And normally the standard always wants the disclosures about policy and standard. So that's how our solution is built: policy and standard, then processes for action, targets, and also financial impact. And all the 12 topical standards included here: climate change, biodiversity, ecosystem, renewable energy deployment, water conservation. So there are various attributes for under those 12 topical standard actually all are included here. And we do the double materiality risk and assessment. We bring AI-led advisory for risk mitigation, planning, strategy. And this is the module, and I can quickly show one glimpse of them, how the outcomes looks like when we implement it after the assessment. So you can see various actually risk areas, and for better visibility, I can take you actually to another outcome as well, which is more data available and completed basically. So this is TCFD, and if I show you here how the heat map looks like. So this is for actually climate risk for and you know, CSRD is linked with climate change as well. And our framework can be very robust. So this is for climate risk, and climate change is a part of CSRD as well. So here you can see the outcome. We are giving, the platform gives actually the risk level of risk from like severe risk area to medium risk area to no risk or low risk. So that's how we implement any sustainability issues and bring the module for the implementation, and we bring the outcome, and we bring the end-to-end solution, and we always integrate it with the business and the financial impact as well at downstream and upstream. So that's how AmploFly 4.0 help in CSRD implementation to the companies.
Thank you very much for that, high level demo. I think you really did justice to the couple of minutes that I gave you. Great. Thank you for that.
And I want to bring one point as
yes,
well.
yes.
So actually, it is an important point. Once we finished the outcome you have seen, right? And it is Gen AI, which bring the recommendations, root cause analysis for the risk areas, and also the KPIs. So we bring financial KPIs and also for ESG management and improvement. So yeah, please, Indrani, go ahead. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So I mean, you guys have embedded Gen AI into this platform to help. I think these are great tools for enterprise-wide change transformations. And I think you're still sharing a screen, Parvi. Yeah, great. So I just wanted to actually go back to this comment we had from Dex, because I think it really sums up the magnitude of something like CSRD, which can be a enterprise-wide, it can be used as a, the topic of our webinar was minimizing risk and maximizing opportunities. It's a great way of really leveraging an organization-wide transformation effort, building in, leveraging levers of technology, climate action, sustainability, just business for good. And I will take, I will actually read out Dex's comment because she mentioned, I'd like to add that including change as early as possible will support in making the journey to producing a report much, much easier. Otherwise, oftentimes these data points are dispersed and owned by different stakeholders of whom have deep and valuable knowledge that can be easily missed. So forming a strategy and approach to engage and involve a large set of stakeholders, I think is essential. Great. Absolutely, Dex. I thought that was a wonderful way of summarizing the essence of something as big and wide and comprehensive as CSRD. And, I go back to what Anna and Elena mentioned in terms of the requirements of complexity. Don't just do it for compliance. I mean, do it really to better your business and, start with your year zero trial now, I mean, for 2025, so that you have a better experience in 2026 when it actually becomes, I think, applicable. But thank you so much, Gauravi, for that demo. Thank you, a heartfelt thanks to our esteemed panelists, Anna, Gauravi, and Elena for sharing their valuable insights today. A wonderful audience. I cannot thank you all enough for not just, listening and logging in on time and listening to the questions, but also actively engaging and participating with the panelists. So a wonderful audience, like I mentioned, for those who joined late, we have, folks from about 30 plus countries today. So really a global audience listening to a global stellar panel. Fantastic. And remember, CSRD, I think it's not a sprint, it's a journey. It's almost a marathon. So let's embark on this journey together. If there are any questions one has, and I know we had one question here which we've not addressed because that's not strictly CSRD, but Sparsh Setia wanted some, oops, Sparsh is very upset we didn't take his question. No, I was commenting, saying that he's completed his MBA in energy management and developing interest in CSRD, BRSR, and climate change like topics. And he wanted some insights about these topics and where to start the future. So what I wanted to tell Sparsh was, we'd like to address that through an email, because I think it's a whole lot of, almost a library of sources that you can go to get started on these topics. And I wanted to actually, send you an email afterwards. But if any of the panelists, maybe Gauravi, Anna can just, if you all maybe can just help him with one or two resources that he can go to get started around CSRD and climate change, for a fresher.
So as Indrani was saying, there is so much things, and the thing about CSRD and climate change, and it's a whole topic of its own, and there's a ton of reports and guides and that can help you with this. So specifically for CSRD, so I would recommend EFRAG's guides, because they basically the team that have been working in developing these requirements and basically building also the guidelines on how companies can actually implement this. They've just released, I think, early this week or late last week. Now I'm mixing it, but it was in the past few days that they've just released the final versions of the, for example, of the materiality. So they have developed some very good guidelines that companies can use to understand how to actually apply all of those that they need to do. And it's a detailed guideline. It doesn't have to be taken as a Bible because it's mostly some guidelines on how companies can do it, but it is a very good starting point if you're completely lost and you don't know where to start. So EFRAG, EFRAG, it's the group of people that are now in charge of this. So that would be a nice way to start into looking into CSRD and the understanding some of the guidelines for its implementation.
Great, thank you for that, Anna. Thank you for taking that. And Sparsh, to your question around BRSR, you can just go to you can Google brsr.com, and you will get the entire schedules, the sections, the mandatory piece, the good to have piece, and the BRSR is also a great guideline. But of course, it's just applicable to the top listed companies in India currently. But it's a great guideline because it also harmonizes best practices from other frameworks as well. So, I mean, I've just, for anybody else who may still have a question, because we are on time, so we can't take any more questions. I've just typed out the email ID. It's newnormal@amploglobal.com. Please feel free to send in your questions, comments, should a question pop up later. But thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you very much to our audience. You made this very worthwhile for us. And, as we end, a special thank you to Anna and Elena for their partnership, for their, invaluable partnership with AmploGlobal. Thank you very, very much for that. And, until next time, as I say, stay sustainable, stay compliant, and, keep making a positive impact. We are, after all, a band of green warriors caring for the planet, which is why we joined in today. We will be doing more webinars later, so keep an eye for that. But thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.